What's up? Alright, some jazzing up, funking up the Dorian scale. So this is a jazz or funk, you know, it's just a way to get some ideas for the Dorian scale. And you can apply these ideas to any scale really, but Dorian's a great place to start. This is very Pat Martino-ish influenced. Originally I was showing it, you know, as how to play Dorian just in a jazz sense, but the backing track that I had used is more of a funk track, so I realized like it's, you know, kind of good for funk as well. And there's just some simple ideas here. So in the tab, what I have written out is we'll go to C Dorian, minor, bluesy minor kind of thing, and I have the Dorian scale written out, so you can see that in the position I'm working in is where we have pinky on the root on the C. And then the other root is on the third string, first finger on the third string. And then our other root, our top root, is pinky again. So there's our three roots. I like this position. It seems the way it's laid out, I think it's a little bit easier to see some of the stuff I want to show. So you can take these licks and work on them in every position has its own sort of Martino-ish passing notes. It's slightly different in each position, but let's start with this one anyway. So that's the Dorian scale. Now if you take that scale, you know, you can kind of get some, it works pretty nicely. If you had a funk groove like I had, just if you add the blues note, I guess you can get away with a lot of stuff. But what we want to get into is a few different chromatic concepts. So this C Dorian, now let's also, I wrote out next is C melodic minor, because that's the Dorian scale but with a raised 7, a natural 7. And some of these lines are going to incorporate that inside it as well. So it's sort of a combination of both lines. And now, ultimately, we also have the chromatic scale because we're going to be using a lot of chromatic notes. So if I start up on this C, that would be 1 octave of the chromatic scale, just to show you all the notes. And it's good to figure this out in multiple octaves, and you know, and then you can slide to get 5 notes on one string, or however it lays out in different ways, you know, depending on where you are, but chromatic scale. Now the chromatic scale by itself clearly doesn't quite give us that sound that we're looking for. It sounds more like Flight of the Bumblebee. So what we want is passing tones, which is pieces of the chromatic scale. And the next thing I had that chromatic line written in tabs, so you can just to see that. But now the passing tones that we're looking at here, the section called passing tones, I'm going through each passing tone in the scale. So we're starting up and going backwards. So we're starting up at the C, okay? The first passing tone, it's labeled B/B flat. That just means in this passing tone, we're playing both the B and the B flat, the 7 and the flatted 7. And then we continue down the scale. Just to show you that there's one. So these passing tones are what's part of the way to give this type of a this kind of Pat Martino-ish sound is we need passing tones. So to be aware of all our options, there's the first one. Sometimes just playing through a passing tone and then the scale gives you a slightly different sound. Next written out is the passing tone, which would be next, which was in between the A and the G. We have a G sharp. So that's going to be written out like this. And then we continue down the scale, down to the C. And you can, work on it in the lower octaves if, I'm just working on this one octave. So that's another option when you're playing the scale. Just to use that one, or you could use both. So I didn't use the whole chromatic scale. I just used the passing tones there and there. So it's like going and then finishing with the scale. You could play them like that. Okay, so there I went up the scale, did a pivot lick, which I'm going to get to, and then did a passing on the top, So you're sneaking in various ways. Next passing tone is in between the G and the F. We have the blue note, so we can so that's another option, passing through there. Also, on these passing tones, generally you want the middle note, the outside note, to be on an upbeat. That's why I hesitated there. I wanted to get, downbeat, upbeat. See, that wasn't an upbeat. See, that to me sounds better. Instead of just going 1 and 2 and 3, because it landed on 3, the outside note. But if I went 1 and 2 and 3, and that put the passing tone on end by adding that extra note. I went back to the high C before I played the chromatic run. Instead of just, that sounds a little bit off to me. So my ear kind of said, hey, no, put a space there, or put a note, or do something. You could put another chromatic note, or a root. Or double this note. But I heard that, and that put things on the right beat. So that's that kind of thing. But that'll come in time too. So there's that. The next passing tone, I have all these written out, is the in between F and E flat. We have an E. This one's also called the bebop scale, but it's just really another passing tone. Passing right through the E from the F to the E flat. And finally, the final passing tone from the 9 to the root, 7 to 9, D to C. There's one fret, of course. So we got perfect. That's a very useful one too. There it is right there. Cool. Now, so those are the passing tones that we want to incorporate into playing the scale. Some other tricks we can also combine it with is the G major arpeggio, pulling to C. So let's take the C. We have a G major arpeggio around it. So in this case, we could just think of C Dorian, you know, with the flatted 7. And then when we want to use the G, that will give us the major 7. So this works like this. Many ways. We're just playing a few notes of the G arpeggio and then hitting the C. There's a very simple one. G, B, D, C. Another way, play the D, G, B, D. There it is up there. Let's see what else. Oh, then the tetrachord. Instead of just the G arpeggio, we're going to add the A. So it's G, A, B, D, called the G tetrachord, G9. The A is the 9. Root 9, 3rd, 5th. But we can set up our C note by approaching it with the G tetrachord like that. And then continue on whatever our line is. Down here, same thing. Another way to set it up, this is all in tab. Yeah, that's... And then right into it. That's what I did here. Passing tones. Okay, so there's some G. You know, so when you're around the G, I'm coming down the scale. Now I jump to the G arpeggio. Use it to outline the C note before I hit it. So there, I used the G arpeggio, and then when I got to the C, I just went into a passing tone, another passing tone. So that was the passing tone here between B and A, and the bebop passing tone, and then it made a nice line. And then the pivot lick, which we'll get to next, and that all. Okay, pivot licks. Yeah, these are really helpful too. So a pivot lick is just a lick where we play a note. We might play 2 notes, and then we go down to a lower note, and we're going to pivot off that note to another note, and then back to that note, and then maybe another note. You know, that's called a pivot note. And the pivot note could change as you go down. You know, you can do that too. That's more of a chromatic shape, but it's the same kind of idea. Maybe you could, you know, do a couple notes on this one pivot, and then as you get lower the note, there's all kinds of variations. But what's written out is from the C, so we're pivoting off of this G, starting up on the high C, B, pivot on the G, B flat, pivot on the G, A, so there's a chromatic run there, broken up by this G pivot note. scale. Next pivot note is on the second string, starting on the G into the blues note, and we're going to pivot on the flat third, the E flat, and then chromatic, use a passing tone. Just simple little licks. Ooh. All right, next pivot lick is going to bring us to the third string, where we're pivoting on the B flat. So we start on the E flat of the C, the minor third, and then chromatic on the next string. All chromatic, we're using the passing tones. And then on the next string, a melodic shape, melodic idea. So we get, I think, no. Yeah, that's it, okay. Now, those are our three things. Using the tetrachord on the G, or just the G or tetrachord G to outline the C. All those passing tones, using them freely, strings of them, you could use, you know, lots of them at the same time. All kinds of things you can do. But so next is some lines that illustrate some examples that help make this a little clear. So some lines I played in the beginning, I transcribed out. Pretty straightforward there. A passing tone there on the second string, just scale there, and then at the very end, passing tone. Next line, line 29, we're starting with a G tetrachord. That's all G. See, this one's going to continue to the next line. So we got, and then into the C, and we go right up to scale. We get to the top of the scale, and then we reverse and go into a pivot lick. Takes us back down to the C. So again, all right, next line number 31 is scale. All right, this time we're scaling, and the passing tone we're using is the bebop scale, so that's the one between the F and the E flat. So we're playing the F, E, E flat. And then we're going back up to the G and kind of doing a approach on the C. So we get nice, more of a jazz bebop sounding lick. This one we start out with the scale, utilize that passing tone, a quick pivot lick, use the blue note, that's kind of an approach note there. We play the G, then we play below it, above it, and then back to the G. That's sort of approaching the G. I did another video on approach notes, so if you check that out, if you're not sure about approach notes, but all right, so this ending, which I bought, so let me play that again, because we end with, so we get this, pivot, approach note, that's sort of a scale approach note, using scale tones to approach that E flat. Up the E flat arpeggio, because E flat is a relative major, and then we're using the G chord to approach the C. So the E flat arpeggio has a B flat in it. And then by using the G chord next, we get the B. So it introduces the major 7 where we just heard the flat 7. Now we're using the major 7. So it you know, the sound, it changes the sound a little bit. You get usage of flat 7 and major 7, you know, right off the bat. More licks. There's yet more licks. There's yet more. Scale. Okay, this one's utilizing the blue note in a big way. The F sharp, flat 5, sharp 4 is the blue note. If you play C pent, it's a cool note to hang on, especially in the funk kind of, and jazz, but you know, that note. Go up to the G, back down to it. You know, it's a very colorful note. So this line, very straightforward. It's just utilizing a pivot and then a chromatic passing tone back to the root. So like in a bebop setting, real up tempo. Line 35. So here we're passing tone, back to the root, continuing down with the scale. There's the bebop passing tone. Oops. Pivot lick. There's the G7. Pivot. And then some bebop licks where we play a high note and then 3 below it. Kind of a cool bebop trick that you hear. So this line has a whole bunch going on. Again, passing tone, line 35. Or, yeah, line 35. Passing tone, scale, bebop lick, jazz cliche lick, the G. There's a lot happening there. I should just play it straight so we can hear what it sounds like. Line 38. Pivot. And one quick passing tone at the end. The D, in between D and C, we have the D flat. Pass through that. And then finally, our final lick, which is line 40, goes. Alright, so this is scale, just straight scale, Dorian scale, pivot lick on a chromatic. Now we're changing the pivot note, going down one, and we go down in arpeggio, the D, the F arpeggio, and end with a cliche, kind of a jazz cliche line. So this lick. Oops. Yeah, there it is. F, we're in C7, but F7 is a very common arpeggio to use over that C7. You know, C and F are related in the 2/5s. When you're playing in C minor, Obviously, you can play the C minor arpeggio, but other arpeggios that sound really nice, anything in the diatonic key, but particularly over C, the 5, G7, the G minor 7 sounds really nice over the C. Obviously, the G7, which we're doing here, or the G tetrachord, sounds nice over the C. It really pulls to that C note. And then the F7 or F arpeggio, you know, there it is right there in a C setting. Sounds really nice. C, like I said, but the 2-chord D minor. C and D sound nice together. All over C, you know, while the C is playing. That's a whole other topic, is the triads and arpeggios in the key. They all work nicely, and I'll have getting sidetracked here. So, but these lines, the purpose of these lines are to be able to play Dorian without just using the Dorian notes, because that does, after a while, you know, in order to get into the more jazz or funk sounding stuff, you want to have these chromatics, be able to utilize chromatics. But chromatics by themselves just sound like that. You know, they don't sound much. So there's ways to fit them in. These are some of the most common ways you see people fitting in the chromatic notes. And so it works over over a swing. Or a funk groove. Try here. If I try, I'll just lose my groove. But you know, it works. You know, it works on it in a funk setting too. So then take it from this position and, you know, work on the Dorian position right below it, down here. This C is here, and this slightly different, the licks don't, all the licks aren't little. You can come up with slightly different licks in different positions because of the fingering of the guitar. You know, you see that a lot down here. And then up here, of course, around the C minor, there's some licks that are very common, but this is a good one. I like this middle position. It helps to see everything laid out. Pat Martino is particularly good at this. If you listen to his playing, these licks are Pat Martino licks. I just was playing them in the beginning more in a funk setting, and I think that about covers it. So any questions, let me know. Subscribe if you would, and any suggestions for lessons or questions on any of this stuff, on these lines. So I'll have the tab up, and I guess that about covers it. Jazzed up Dorian Martino lesson. So thanks.